Covering international cricket and the world of pro wrestling. This is Stumps and Bumps on SEN with Eric Bischoff and Bharat Sundaresan.
Well, Stumps and Bumps time here on SEN Cricket and on whatever podcast platform you're listening to us on. My name is Bharat Sundaresan. I'm your cricket guy, and I'm here as always with the wrestling icon Eric Bischoff, who I'm saying Eric is turning into a bit of a cricketing guru. I've had at least a dozen people tell me I have a new cricketing guru, and that is Eric Bischoff.
Oh my gosh! Well, then they're in trouble. It is literally the blind leading the blind. But I'm here to be led. That's what I'm here for.
Look, you always speak about enlightening, Eric. And last week you were enlightened by the story of the Ashes. And trust me, more people, and you just assume, right? Like, or people like us in the cricket world assume everybody knows how the Ashes were born. But then you realize it's not true. So I think a lot of people around Australia and the world actually learned about the history of the Ashes or the conception of the Ashes like you did. And while you were learning about it last week. So there you go. The Stumps and Bumps, we are making an impact worldwide.
Yeah, one of the things that I call it edutainment, but I love to learn or share interesting, relevant information, but in an entertaining way, right? Otherwise, you feel like you're, at university listening to a professor. But when you can learn something while you're having fun in the process, it seems, at least for me, it sticks more. And I would love, future episodes, we're going to be doing this for a long time, but I would really learn to love about just go back to the beginning of cricket time and how the sport grew and how it affected cultures and how it affected politics and economies. I'm sure all those things are interesting, but that's a rabbit hole I'm looking forward to going down.
Oh, and I can't wait to drag you down into that rabbit hole, Eric. I've existed there throughout my life, and like you have with, the history of wrestling and everything else, and all the other histories that you're interested in. But like always, it's not just the two of us. We bring the worlds of cricket and wrestling together. And in wrestling, you have the third man in the ring. In cricket, you have the third umpire, and that for us is SEN's own Nims Azur.
Always a despised figure in there that is the third man normally, but it's always great to see that there is a welcoming presence here. But Eric and Bharat, thanks so much for having me. Going on what you were saying before, though, Bharat, the amount of people that have tapped me on the shoulder and said, "Hang on, when did this podcast start, and why am I only hearing about this now?" So the good news is we can get us on all platforms now: Apple Podcasts, YouTube, Spotify, wherever you get your podcast, you can listen to Stumps and Bumps, and you can even watch us as well. And Eric, you're turning quite into the guru that is. So many people have said, "I didn't realize I wanted Eric Bischoff to talk about cricket more than I have right now."
Well, we'll see how long that lasts.
Bharat, though, you did mention that it's been a big couple of, you were talking about the Ashes, and now we're sort of seeing, we're just coming off the back of a few T20s, which you were commentating, and we've seen a few breakout performances. And it's funny, Eric, because no matter what the sport is, no matter what anything is, I'm a big NASCAR fan, and currently the NASCAR season wrapped up, and the whole storyline was Denny Hamlin, this is his best chance to win the NASCAR championship. He led for about 200 odd of 300 laps, but he couldn't quite get the job done at the end, which shows just how cruel sport is. And Kyle Larson got the championship. All of a sudden.
And it also, I don't mean to interrupt you, but it also tells you how good the writers who script NASCAR are. Because that's a movie. You just told me movie. You get that in the hands of a good script writer, and you've got 90 minutes of feature film entertainment on your hands.
Precisely. And we've seen here with the most recent T20 series, we had a washout, so a damp squib to start off the series. So then the Australians came out swinging in game number 2, and we saw Josh Hazelwood absolutely demolish the Indian batsman and become a new Ashes folklore, because of course everything is linked towards the next thing. Already now people are going back to the NASCAR analogy I brought up. The season is barely finished, and people are like, "Oh, maybe Denny can't get it done. Maybe next year's Denny's redemption." So we're always thinking ahead. No matter we're always looking towards a sequel before we've even finished the primary.
Well, you know what? If you've listened to me talk at all on a podcast about wrestling and the formulas, because storytelling is simply a formula. It's a beginning, it's a middle, and an end, and all the elements and the beats that happen along the way, right? And those are all carefully constructed to engage the audience. And that's why we love story and sport together, because it takes you on a journey. And this is a great journey, but it's also just an example of how just short sighted, I guess, or a the attention span disorder that is everywhere in sports is like, man, you're walking out of the movie theater, you still got popcorn on your hands, and you're already looking forward to the next movie. Man. Sit back and enjoy it, have some fun.
That's the world we live in right now, Eric. Everybody just wants to move on. Either they want to disagree with whatever your opinion is, right? And you know all about it on social media, Mr.
Sure.
Bischoff. Or it's, it's, I think the short-term memory probably is because of phones and everything else. People just forget what's happened, like probably even in the previous game or the previous race. And just on NASCAR, I knew nothing about NASCAR. And you know how I was introduced to NASCAR in the 90s? By watching WCW Nitro, because suddenly
Right.
Goldberg had a NASCAR car. You remember that, Eric?
Yeah, that's right. And we jumped into that. We sponsored a car in the NASCAR series, I think for 2 years, maybe or three. And it helped us really grow our television audience, because all of a sudden now we were exposing our characters, or in the case of cricket, athletes, to an entirely different audience that quite often weren't already WCW fans. So it's a great way to get as they say in the wrestling business, to get a rub. And you got a rub off NASCAR back in the day.
And one fast bowler from Australia who's he's not had the rub of the green in terms of fitness in the last few summers. Nims and Eric, he's been one guy who's broken down quite a bit, especially when the Test summer's on. But Josh Hazelwood has been on and he's been on fire this during this white ball series against India, and just on that MCG last week, 82,000 people, of which I think there were what 81,500 Indians. It was crazy being in Melbourne last week, just
In the
getting into
rain too.
and in the rain as well. I mean, I got into the
Wow.
tram in Melbourne and I felt like, wait, this feels like a local train in Mumbai because there were only Indian people, A, and B, people were just crushed into each other. And that's how everyday life is in Bombay. So that was crazy to just be in there. And the one thing about Indian fans, they leave quicker than they come in. So once India started losing, it went from 82,000 to 30,000 very, very quickly. So they don't like to hang around to see their team lose. But just on Josh Hazelwood, Nims, obviously you've grown up watching him. Uh, he's part of that pack of three. So Pat Cummins is the captain who we spoke about last week, who's injured. Mitchell Stark is probably the sexiest of them all in terms of how he bowls, left armer, quick. Has he makes the highlight reels. But Josh Hazelwood is the guy who's just. I mean, there's more to him than just being the workhorse, but the way I've rarely seen a fast bowler bowl as well as he is currently, and I was just speaking to a couple of the Australian coaches. Even they wish the Ashes were starting tomorrow and not in 3 weeks' time. But you know what stands out about him is that you whatever format you bowl in, and Eric, there are three main formats: Test, One Dayers, and T20s, played very differently, but it just feels like he's doing the same thing. It doesn't never looks like he's doing anything special, but he's still able to be more dominant than anyone else. And that kind of reminded me of, say, a Bret Hart or a Lex Luger, because Bret Hart was so technical in a proper technique. He could do the same thing in a 60-minute match, Iron Man match, or even the occasional hardcore match or whatever. It just felt like he was just doing the same thing, but it still looked exceptional.
Yeah, I mean, and that's reps, right? That's experience, and that's based on what you told me. That's a really good analogy, because I mean, Brett was a great champion in WWE. I don't want to take anything away from Brett's time as the champion, but in fairness to a lot of other people, Brett was not one of the better champions, because Brett, while he excelled in some aspects of wrestling, he was really short on charisma, like really, really, really short. And as a result of that, he never really reached the level. Like Brett has so much respect in terms of his technical abilities because in that area, he's maybe the best, or if not one of the best
Mm.
in our lifetime. No question about that. But in terms of his ability to really reach the mountaintop, like a Stone Cold Steve Austin or a John Cena or an Undertaker or a Hulk Hogan, just came up a little short. But what a valuable asset, much like the player you're talking about, to be able to adjust and play two different styles. May not, end up having the best, year career-wise this year. Maybe he will next year, but he's consistent, and consistency has value.
Mm.
It's funny you mentioned that too, because Brett, you said how consistent he is across all the formats, and I pulled up the numbers because the good thing about sport is the numbers don't lie.
Mm.
His bowling average, and to be a good bowler, roughly if you're around the average of a 20, you're doing very well for yourself.
Mm.
In test matches, his average is 24.21. In one-day internationals, he's 27.66. And in T20 internationals, the hardest format for bowlers, he's 21.26. So he's very, very consistent. And as you sort of mentioned, we touched on Bret Hart, but I sort of link that more to Lex Luger in the sense because you're right, Brad. Everyone knows Pat Cummins. He's the poster boy. Everyone knows Mitchell Stark because he's the flashy one. But and then there's and there's Josh Hazelwood. Everyone knows
Mm.
Josh Hazelwood. It was in a big three. The third, the bronze on the podium is always going to get the least amount of shine, and that's why I thought Lex Luger was a very interesting one, a comparison because you don't have a lot of the moments of the Monday Night War without Lex Luger because that first initial shock of, oh my God, anything can happen is because Lex Luger appeared on the Mall of America.
Mm.
You don't have that big moment on Nitro where there's finally someone that's able to put a stake through the NWO when he wins the title on the 100th Nitro. Of all of the success that WCW had, if you remove Lex Luger from that, I don't think you have those big moments. And Eric, you were there, obviously, you lived it. Um, do you think that Luger gets the flowers that he sort of deserves as such a player during that era?
Really great observation, Nims. And to answer the question, absolutely, he does not.
Mm.
And I myself, up until, I don't know, the last couple of years, probably because I do the podcast and we go into so much detail, which requires me to really kind of break things down, break decisions down, break situations down in great detail. Um, when I realized it in the course of doing my podcast, I have to say that Lex was as they say here in the United States, the shot across the bow. It was the first shot. And it was such a shocking first shot because everybody was surprised, including people at WWE who thought he was still under contract. That's the truth. It was such a shock that it set the tone, as Brat said, it set the tone for the unexpected. We conditioned the audience to know that you had to turn into Nitro because things were going to happen that no one saw coming. And we would have never been able to communicate that message had it not been for that opening shocking moment with Lex Luger. It's a really good observation.
Brett, do you reckon, because Josh Hazelwood didn't play in the most recent T20, they're obviously switching over to red ball format at the moment. And India won. I'm not going to say one man doesn't define whether a cricket match is won or lost, but do you think if Josh Hazelwood was playing that India would have had not an easy run to win that match, but they would have maybe had a few more obstacles in the way? Because you look even in the one days, Josh Hazelwood just was on point.
Especially the way he's bowling, what he was in that, and I think he would have made a huge difference. And the only reason he's not playing is because the Australian selectors want him to play a red ball game, a 4-day game to condition himself into that first test of the Ashes. He was what? He had figures of 3 for 6 after 3 overs in Melbourne, and the game was more or less done. And I think India struggled to 120 odd, but he finished the game off, and that's what Hazelwood does when he's at his peak. And he's had his moments, just like you said, Luger had his moments. But maybe in the bigger picture, when you look back on, say, when Josh Hazelwood's career is done, you'll still speak about, yes, Cummins, Stark, and Hazelwood. And just the same way we speak about Hogan, NWO, and oh yeah, Lex Luger as well. Yeah. Like Eric said, only through 83 weeks, the podcast that Eric co-hosts and probably is my favorite podcast out there in the world. I'm not saying this just because Eric is here. Is he himself is learning, and he was the one in charge of the promotion of the company. He himself is learning. Yeah, he was more valuable than we all thought he was. So I think it's great. I just want to also credit with, so this discussion came to light with my personal trainer and my dear friend who you know really well, Nims, Rocky Monero, who also books Melbourne City Wrestling. And Eric, he's from Adelaide, huge cricket fan. See, I'm bringing worlds together everywhere. And he had a lot to do with the young Rhea Ripley when she was coming through the ranks at Drive City Wrestling. So all the worlds are coming together.
I love it. I love that. I'm a big fan of Rhea Ripley. So great to even make that connection digitally, if no other way.
And if anyone from the Cricket Australia marketing team is leading, as Bharat said, there are 3 weeks until the Ashes start. That's plenty of time to put Josh Hazelwood on a bus, take him around the country. We'll get the Hazelwood Express as we fire up for Perth. But
That's a good idea.
but we're underway here at Stumps and Bumps. We will touch on some wrestling because Saturday night's main event has wrapped up. A lot happens from it, but probably the most earth-shattering one is we've got some hints for what John Cena's final match is going to be. We'll touch on that in just a moment, right here on Stumps and Bumps with Eric Bischoff and Bharat Sundaresan.
You're listening to Stumps and Bumps with Eric Bischoff and Bharat Sundaresan on SEN.
This is Stumps and Bumps, a look at the latest news in the world of cricket, both domestically and around the world, and we also touch on pro wrestling as well. Now, Saturday night's main event was on Peacock in the United States and YouTube worldwide, and CM Punk once again became a world champion in the WWE almost 2 years after he sensationally returned to the company that he famously walked out on. But something that was more earth-shattering that came out of it was, we all know this is John Cena's final year, but it was revealed that John Cena's final opponent at the next Saturday night's main event would be determined by a 16-man tournament. So this will begin November 10th when Monday Night Raw is in Cena's hometown of Boston. What was very interesting to me is the voiceover when he was talking about it said it will feature superstars from Raw, SmackDown, NXT, as well as some who don't even work here, according to John Cena. Now, obviously, the internet just goes wild when they say this. But we've seen in the past year, the WWE has successfully integrated talent from TNA Wrestling and AAA, which they now purchased, into their programming rather seamlessly. Like stars like Vikingo from AAA, Joe Hendry from TNA, and some outside talent have flourished in the WWE spotlight. And Eric, you've been in the booker's chair, you've had the pencil with you, you've booked tournaments and things like that. Has there ever been more pressure on someone that we don't know than the final opponent for John Cena?
I'm excited about this. The tournament format in professional wrestling is more often than not really lame, because it requires a tremendous amount of pre-planning. I mean, you really have to think creatively in great detail when you're putting together a tournament. It makes it really challenging, and more often than not, this is why they fail. They fail because there's usually no real meaningful stakes. You may win a shot at the title, an opportunity to challenge somebody again. Now that's a valuable thing, right, to have. If you're a professional wrestler, if you're the number one contender, potentially, storyline wise, you could be the champion on television. Financially, in the real world, you could be making a lot more money. So it's a real stake. It's not just a scripted, fictional stake. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So for that reason, I like it. The other reason I like it is it forces the creators, the writers, to work backwards, as I said, in significant detail. We all say we like to work backwards, figure out where you want to be, figure out how to get there, right? More often than not, because of scheduling and timing and habits, and sometimes it's just better ideas, as they evolve. But you end up booking 3 or 4 weeks in advance. Um, that's not sufficient to get the best out of a story. So I think this is a great opportunity. I'm excited to find out who it's going to be. It's that anticipation, story, anticipation, reality, surprise, and action. The story's right there. The story is who's going to be in the tournament when it starts and who's going to be in a tournament when it ends and what's all the great action in the middle. So you've got story, you've got anticipation, because now for weeks we're going to go on this journey through this tournament format to find out who's the third, well, not the third man, who's the lucky man,
Mm-hmm.
right? Now you've got anticipation. The reality they'll work on, the surprise will be in the end when we find out who this person is, and then the action will be the match. So this is a perfect setup for what I refer to and try to preach as the Sarsa formula, because it has all of the elements.
Bharat, when the bracket will be announced, like some of the names that were there, and you and I, we both have that we put our fans hat on. We're thinking like,
Yeah.
oh, imagine if it's Rusev. What if they relive? What if it could be Kurt Angle? Could be what? It just goes everywhere. And when you sort of had the announcement, because we all knew that Saturday night's main event, the last one for the year, is going to be his final match. Where did your brain go to immediately? Who are you thinking? I'm just like, well, I hope it's LA Knight. I hope it's a young guy. I hope he rekindles an old rivalry. Like, what's the cogs that were going on in your head?
No, I think firstly on the tournament format in wrestling, I mean, when I go back to my childhood watching WWF and King of the Ring, I think what really I used to like about King of the Ring is occasionally you would see a match that you've never seen before. You're like, oh yeah, those two I've never seen before in the ring, and they don't have a rivalry, so as a sport fan, I was like, that felt normal, like because because in wrestling you're so conditioned to seeing two people in the ring only if, I mean, in most promotions, only if there is a storyline or if there is some backstory or some sort of reason for them to be in the ring to settle the issue out. But in a tournament format, like it's like a sporting contest. They're there to win. There's no reason for it, just to progress to the next round and to for greater glory. So I used to like that, and this time around it feels even more significant with John Cena, and before even who I think it should be or who I want it to be. I think it's a great way of saying this is such a big part of John Cena's legacy as well in the second chapter of his career, right? I mean, the narrative was, oh, he buries everyone. So if you see him in the last 10 or 12 years, they've just used that, oh, John Cena buries everyone with the golden shovel narrative and turned it around. And what has he done basically in the last 12 years? He's just put everyone over,
Hmm.
right? Whether it's the new guys, AJ Styles, Kevin Owens, go back to 2017 when Roman was not, the crowd wasn't connecting with him, bring back John Cena, get Roman a push. So I think this is a great way of honoring the legacy of John Cena by saying, hey, he's the one who gives opportunities to wrestlers. And this is a
And you know
great
what,
way.
Barat? I'm really glad you brought that up, and I don't mean to interrupt you, but I know we have a short show. We could do a 2 hour show
Yeah,
talking
we could.
ideas. But one of the other cool aspects about what you just pointed out so clearly and correctly is that this idea of turning everything around on its head and taking what was criticism and then reversing it. I am I know John and I are friends. We don't speak often or anything like that. We don't hang out, but we text each other from time to time, and there's a mutual affection and respect. I think I know John Cena pretty well as a human being, and this I'm almost certain was John's creative decision. John, because I know John probably could have laid his final retirement schedule out any way he wanted to. I'm almost 100% certain of that. And knowing that it's his decision, not because he wants to reverse the perception, but because that's who John Cena really is. You're seeing the real John Cena in this story because it's his story and he wanted it told this way. And I think that's really cool.
You're one of the people, Eric, that's been in pretty rarefied air of being along with that John Cena journey because obviously in 2005, one of the biggest storylines in the WWE at the time was he was the number one draft pick on WWE Raw, which you were the storyline general manager at the time. And the fact that he debuted in 2002 and by 2005 he was already a megastar. Did you, when you used to work with him on Raw back in the day, what did you ever think that 20 years from now this guy is going to be one of the goats?
Absolutely. John has that intangible quality that is absolutely necessary to be at the very top in professional wrestling, and that's charisma. John Cena walks into a room, and it's not, I mean, he's a big, imposing guy, don't get me wrong, but he's not like The Undertaker. He's not 7 foot tall, right? He's not even Hulk Hogan. He's not 6'6" and 350 pounds with a big blonde Fu Manchu and a bandana on his head. When Hulk Hogan walked in a room, unless you were sight handicapped, you knew it before you said anything. John Cena has that same quality, but not because of his overbearing size, his overwhelming size. It's because of the energy that walks into the room with him. You can't touch it. You can't put it in a bottle. If you could, I would, and I'd sell it. I'd be living on an island, Fiji. But John has it in abundance, and that's why he's a star.
One thing
And
too.
we did know it. The other reason I knew it, Nims, to be more specific, is because by the time I had been started working with John in 2002, I'd been around the business for about 20 or 25 years. I've worked with a lot of people, and I knew the ones who were pros, who approached their business like professionals, who paid attention to detail, who were disciplined. That was evident in just watching John Cena backstage. He was always a pro. The way he interacted with people, the way he prepared, the way he broke things down at the end when he talked about it, what worked, what didn't work. He's a true pro. We
And
saw
we
it then.
and we can kind of see that now as well. The reason, like, there's no secret that he's successful in Hollywood at the moment. There's no, you don't have to join the dots to see why he's the poster boy for HBO Max series like the Pacemaker and stuff, the Peacemaker and stuff like that. He truly is one of the greats, and I'm really looking forward to see just how this tournament progresses. Before we put a wrap up on Saturday night's main event, someone else that I wanted to highlight is we also saw the WWE Women's World Championship reign of Tiffany Stratton come to an end in a fairly dominant fashion at the hands of Jade Cargill. I'm very fascinated by Tiffany Stratton. I was very lucky enough to interview her when she came to Perth last year for Elimination Chamber at the PLE. But her story is great because she's a former gymnast from Minnesota, but her dream of, going to the Olympics, doing all that was cut short because she had a foot injury. So she then sought out Greg Gagne, of all people, and wanted to pursue professional wrestling. So she was just like, well, look, I'm athletic. I'm like, I can do a lot of things. I would like to continue doing this. So she signed on with the WWE Performance Center in 2021, joined NXT in 2023, where she won the Women's Championship there, got a main roster call up, won Money in the Bank in 2024 before winning the WWE Women's Championship in January this year. And it sort of changes the spotlight because Tiffany Stratton, along with Bianca Belair, these are two of the biggest stars in the WWE now, the female ones. We touched on Rhea Ripley, but as you said, Brat, she wanted to be a pro wrestler. It was her dream. She went to Right City Wrestling. She trained there. Tiffany Stratton wanted to be a gymnast. Bianca Belair was a track and field athlete that, for whatever reason, it just didn't get to go down that path. And the WWE are finding these athletes and going, we can do something with that. And I think that's really cool that you're actually seeing someone like Tiffany Stratton go from, I don't want to say nothing because she's obviously built a big body of work, both physically and mentally as a gymnast, to translate that into the world of sports entertainment.
You know what? You're going to see a lot more of that in WWE. I was at the Performance Center to produce one of their non-scripted shows. I was down there for I think 2 or 3 days, and I spent a lot of time in the Performance Center. And when I first got there, Jeremy Borash took me for a tour of the facility, And he took me back into the training area where the rings were set up. And there was probably a dozen or more women working out, about the same number of young men. And I was talking to Jeremy, and he's pointing some of them out, and they were all high level collegiate athletes. Division One, which is one of the premier divisions in college athletics. Division One track stars, gymnasts, a lot of gymnasts. They're really looking for people with that kind of sports and athletic background at an early age, even if it's not in wrestling, because if you have the skill sets to excel in gymnastics or certain track competition, things like that, it's all discipline, timing, knowing your body, and more importantly, learning how to be coachable. And that's a one common denominator I think WWE in particular has zeroed in on when they're looking for talent is, it's got to look a certain way. There's got to be some potential there, but are they coachable? Because if somebody isn't coachable, all the other attributes in the world aren't going to matter.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's
and I think it also they used to dressing room cultures, and I guess they just naturally better like you want team people or you want a team person, right? I guess they're attuned to it more than someone who just grows up to be a professional wrestler.
And we're going to be seeing a lot more of that too, because it's funny. If you look at cricket, you can only put 11 people on the park, and are you trying to tell me there's only 11 talented people? What about like 12, 13, 14, 15? They're very, very talented as well. But on the topic of stepping outside the ropes of the squared circle, we're going to step inside the ropes of the boundary because you want to talk about some female athletes that have dominated
Mm.
recently. We're seeing a changing of the guard when it comes to the world of women's cricket. And we will touch on that in just a moment, right here on Stumps and Bumps. Remember, you can get in touch with us anytime. Use our social media at Stumps Bumps on all of the socials, or use the hashtag Stumps and Bumps. We'll be back right after this.
You're listening to Stumps and Bumps with Eric Bischoff and Bharat Sundaresan on SEN.
Welcome back to Stumps and Bumps, a look at the news in the world of pro wrestling and cricket. Yes, these two worlds collide. And the Women's World Cup has just wrapped up, Bharat, and you follow the game very well as I do. If, let's just say, hypothetically speaking, if you knew nothing about cricket and I was just a common man on the street and just came up to you and said, so in this tournament, who is the dominant people and who would be the Vegas odds favorite to win this tournament? I'm sure 100% out of the times you were asked, you would say the Australian women's cricket team.
Yeah, I mean, they are like Hulk Hogan in the 1980s. They were untouchable, right? Like, yeah, it was more a question of who they're going to beat rather than whether they're going to win or not.
Exactly.
And probably one of the most dominant sporting outfits in the history of sport, right? What the Australian women's team have been able to do in the last 8, 9 years is just unbelievable. And then for the Indian women to kind of, who had failed in two finals before, and there's been more money put into women's cricket in India for the last few years, and this pressure on this team saying, hey, like you need to win a big event though, you need to win a big world title, and for this Indian women's team to then go and down the mighty Australia in the semi-finals in the world record run chase, and then to pull off a World Cup win in Mumbai, I think it's a red letter day for India as a country. For so long, for the longest time, women's cricket was not even, it was privately funded. Like you go back 20 years, it was privately funded by people who just wanted women to play cricket in India. To now but now it's run by the BCCI, the Board of Control for Cricket in India, who runs Indian cricket and some might say world cricket. But for them to do what they've done, it was a packed house in Mumbai on Sunday night. Like I remember covering women's cricket in 2009. There were barely anyone there to watch it. So yeah, it's a huge moment. And I think the wrestling link I can come up with is going back to Hulk Hogan. And Hulk Hogan, was if the Australian team was Hulk Hogan and they dominated the way they did, and also maybe even you can add WWF for the longest time. Like WWF needed competition, and because it felt like people wanted an alternative. And I think I can think of one man whom we might know, Nims, who probably provided that alternative. And he might be here on our show. So, what I think India have been, or the Indian women have been able to do in the wrestling world, that's what Eric Bischoff did in the mid 90s.
What was interesting is Nims, you started that question out by referencing Vegas odds, and it brings me to something I wanted to talk to you guys about because even today on 83 weeks, I don't mind talking about past storylines and whatever happened in the ring and all that. But what really excites me is the business of the
Mm.
professional wrestling business, and what's really begun to intrigue me is the business of the cricket business. And one of the things that's happening here in the United States, if you follow the NBA, of course, there's been a gambling issue and a very, very serious one at
Mhm.
extremely high levels. And it's all that anybody's talking about. And people are likely going to go to jail as a result of it. And it made me wonder, I wonder how, because I was thinking about how this controversy is actually going to affect the game and the fans that enjoy it. And it got to me thinking about what about cricket? How big is the cricket industry? And I found out the gambling section of it that's called GGR, or gross gaming revenues, I believe. It's just the amount of money that changes hands. 200 billion dollars a year. And here's what really fried my circuits, guys. Like my hair started smoking. What was it? The IPL, as you know, better than I do because I just Googled it, has a 60-day season and 74 games. That 60-day season alone is 100 billion of the overall 200 billion annually over the course of 60 days. I don't know what the math is or how many hours that
Mm.
is, but that's a lot of money per hour. Find that fascinating. And what I was curious to hear from you guys is, and maybe we don't have time on this show, we
Mm.
can continue this next week because I got a lot more I want to talk about in this regard. Um, how has it affected the game? What are the controversies that have come with gambling, legal and otherwise? And how has it affected the sport of cricket?
And just it's even more fascinating. I mean, those numbers are staggering, Eric, even for someone who's been covering cricket for the last 18 years. Is Gambling is still illegal in India. An Indian Premier League, the IPL, is played in India mainly. I mean, it's an Indian product. So the only thing you can bet on in India are horses, and you can buy a local government-funded lottery ticket. So a lot of that gambling that you speak about either happens with Indian expats internationally or just people overseas or through other ways of doing it through India. And now the big game changer that the Indian government, current government, have thrown the, if you want to call it a spanner in the wheels in terms of people who don't mind the occasional wager is so the way it was working in India was through fantasy cricket, fantasy sport elsewhere, so fantasy cricket. So they brought in a regulation very recently banning all fantasy sports. So even India, the Indian cricket team, who had Dream 11 as their sponsor for the longest time, so they had to kind of stop doing that. So they've gone and found themselves a new sponsor. So now I'm going to be intrigued, and this has happened very very recently after the last IPL season. So IPL season, the IPL starts end of March and goes right up to the end of May or even early June. So I'm very intrigued by what's going to happen in the next IPL season because the money is just going up and up and up. Whether it's the
Well, and now with technology being what it is, you can live in India and with a VPN, you can place a bet anywhere in the world you want to. It's impossible almost to manage. But even in Australia where gambling is legal, sports betting is
Mhm.
legal, the number there, and this is from 2023, $50 billion. That's legal.
Mhm.
So it'll be interesting over time to see how the game changes because of the just look, money drives everything, right? It'll be interesting to see if the game changes at all because
We've
of gambling.
we've
And
also
just if I could jump in, sorry, Nims. I think where the game has already changed, though, Eric, is so when the IPL started, there was the one league. There was the first real T20 league which had private investment in it. Now, when you look at the economics of world cricket, or you just look at the global cricket calendar, there might be at least there are at least 6 or 7 prominent leagues, but there might be 15 other leagues. Every other, I mean, the Cayman Islands had their own cricket tournament, Eric, just a few months ago, a T20, where you get a few former players, retired players, a few players from here and there. And the only reason that exists is so that people have something to bet on. So it's
Uh,
already changed a lot, but it's going to go more and more. And no, it's a
Created a
fascinating
lot of
space, and I can't
opportunity.
wait to, yeah, more opportunity. So I can't wait to get into the weeds with you as we go forward.
We've
Oh,
also
we're going to dig into this one next week.
we've also seen too that the explosion of the European Cricket League has kicked off. We've seen Major League Cricket in the United States, which features players like Steve Smith. We've
Mhm.
seen the Sri Lankan Premier League, the Pakistani Super League. So really, these leagues, well, yes, and the other thing too is all the players buy in because the money does trickle down. Like you mentioned too with the Indian women's cricket team, one of the big things that got them to this level of success is the pay parity
Yeah.
because they are now on par with the men. That money has to come from coffers somewhere. So, and it's all sponsorship dollars, it's all TV rights. In fact, years and years ago, Eric, it's very amusing because there was and you'd know this quite well, Bharat. There was a an Indian broadcaster that, for whatever reason, didn't get the rights to broadcast cricket games. So they said to themselves, you know what? We're going to make our own cricket league, and we're going to buy players, and
Yeah.
we're going to play thing. And they signed legends. They signed legends like Brian Lara from the
Mm.
West Indies. All of these big name players like Chris Cairns, and they made their own tournament. They created their own Indian Cricket League to fund the content because that's at the end of the day, that's what it came down to. We need something to put on our screens, and someone needs to foot the bill.
Yeah, and the ICL that you mentioned started in 2006, I think, or 2007. And this is at a time when India was not so on 2020 cricket. Like it was a new format. Like the Indian board said, we won't take it seriously. Then ICL starts. India win the first ever T20 World Cup in 2007, and the IPL is born. So I think that period of time between 2007 and 8 changed the world of cricket and world sport. And just on that, I remember a few years ago, and I was like Eric, my mind was blown where Vince McMahon was on a business call when he was still running WWE, and this is when I think WWE were waiting for their broadcast rights, whoever it was with back then. And he was on record saying, no, we are waiting to see where the IPL lands and then we'll take a call. I was like, wait, hang on. What? Vince McMahon talking about the IPL? Wow, cricket is more significant than I thought. And there you go. Here we are talking about it on our show.
I love it. I look forward to next week. I really do.
We'll do a bit of a deep dive there, but you're right though, Bharat. This really was a watershed moment for Indian
Yeah.
cricket. We see a lot of and we talk about the private leagues. Another thing is we're also seeing women's cricket leagues as well. The
Yeah.
WBBL is just as successful as the BBL. The Women's Premier League is just as successful as the IPL. It gets that much coverage, and this success is only just going to bring more eyeballs to it. There'll be more franchises. I
Yeah.
reckon teams will be sold and there'll be more games, so that calendar will just expand. But what I wanted to ask you, Brett, before we wrap things up here on the show is, in terms of this moment, because we know how dominant the Australians were. They've got 7 ODI World Cups. That's more than every other cricketing nation combined. India have they've waited 20 years. This is almost third time a charm because in '05 they lost, 2017 they lost, and now, like I said, 2025 they've got the title. Has the trickle down effect? Do you think it's been felt yet, or we're just at the start of it?
This is going to explode women's cricket, like because of the power that rests with Indian cricket right now, with BCCI and the ICC who run the sport. It's a watershed moment, not just for the Indian team and like Indian sport, because it is a big moment for them, and it's amazing to see people celebrate through the night and there were parties on the street for a women's team. I mean, we've seen it with men's cricket for a long time, but just to put that into context as well, the first ever Women's World Cup was played in 1973. So 2 nights ago was the first time a final was played which didn't involve Australia or England. So it was India versus South Africa. So, those two countries have been around for a long time in that sense. So I think, but this will basically kind of convince the BCCI, if they weren't convinced already, that more money needs to be put into women's cricket, and it'll just grow there'll be more money on offer for the players, and yeah, it's going to grow women's cricket. Cricket's going to go to the Olympics in just what 3 years time. I can't wait to get to LA. So for the first time since 1902. So it's going to be a big moment there. No, it's going to change the game. It is. I think it's right up there. I think there's the formation of the NWO and this moment. I think that's it's on par with that.
Rod, I'm looking forward to you coming to LA for the Olympics too, because while you're in LA, you're going to have to swing by the house, and we
Yes.
can actually do an episode of Stumps and Bumps right here at my kitchen table. That'd be
No.
fun, wouldn't it?
Can't wait. And when I'm in Cody, Wyoming, Eric, I'm not Bharat Sundaresan, I'm Baz Bischoff. So
That's right, you're Baz. Get
Hey,
you a
well,
t-shirt. I'm Baz.
well, that about almost wraps up another edition of Stumps and Bumps. Remember, you can be a part of the show by tweeting us any questions and by using the hashtag Stumps and Bumps. Eric, you've got a busy month ahead of you because at the end, after Thanksgiving, you've got your next event of Real American Freestyle coming up.
We do, and I mean, it's we're already so far behind, but I love that. I thrive under pressure. So in one sense, I enjoy it. In the other sense, it's kind of keeping me up at night. But we've got we've got an amazing card. Michael Chandler is going to be on the card, who's a big MMA star. Rumor has it. I think I heard somewhere he might be fighting Conor McGregor at the White House. I don't know, just a rumor. It's too many great names to mention, but it is a stacked card. A lot of UFC athletes who compete currently in the UFC, but also come from a freestyle wrestling background. They're going to be competing with each other. We've got a young man by the name of Bo Bassett. Bo is still in high school. He's got what's called here in the United States, if you may have heard, an NIL deal, name, image, and likeness. He is going to have an amazing career as a wrestler. He's going to be on the card. He's going to be on the mat with a guy who's 38 years old, but it's just an amazing guy, amazing wrestler, also a former MMA fighter. His name is Darion Caldwell. So Darion's like 38. Bo might be 17. So it's virtually the young gun coming for the old gunslinger. It's going to be fun.
That's going to be crazy. So that is a couple of days after Thanksgiving in Chicago. We'll give you more details as the date gets a little bit closer. Bharat, you're going to be in the commentary box once again for the fourth T20 International between Australia and India. That is this Thursday. Our great friend Tom Morris will also join you as well.
Yes, indeed. Very much so. Yeah, I was home for 2 days. I'm off to the Gold Coast tomorrow morning. People go to the Gold Coast to holiday. I go there. My work is like a holiday, so so I wouldn't complain. So I'm off to the Gold Coast. Yeah. So I'm doing the next game and the last T20I in Brisbane, and then I'm home for a few days, and then Perth, baby, the Ashes around the corner. So lots to, and some of the English players have already started arriving on these shores. So I'm sure they've copped some abuse already. That's how it works in Australia. So friendly abuse. So lots to look forward to, and lots to look forward to next week for us on Stumps and Bumps.
Very much so. Make sure you keep in touch with us, though. You can follow our social media at BeastieBoy07, where you could check out not just Bharat's commentaries and highlights, but you can also read his fine work that he does for Crick Buzz as well. And no matter, he'll pop up on your TV, radio, and newspaper somewhere as well. At E Bischoff to follow Eric, and
all over your social media. He'll be all over your timeline.
at E Bischoff to follow Eric on his social media, and check out 83 Weeks, his podcast on ad-free shows. There's brand new episodes dropping. There is a huge archive as well, and don't forget the family of ad-free shows too, which includes My World by my close personal friend Jeff Jarrett. He'll even say that to you as well, and much more. And look out at SEN Cricket on social media to see our videos, clips of the show, and all your cricketing news. But on behalf of Bharat Sundaresan and Eric Bischoff, this has been Stumps and Bumps, and we'll see you next week.